Audiobook. Workweek Productivity. Chapter 1. Where to start? Curiously, in school, and later in college, we're taught everything: math, physics, chemistry, complicated formulas, and technical knowledge to be efficient and productive professionals. And they certainly prepare us to work like champions. But there's something that, mysteriously, eludes them: learning to listen to and understand ourselves. How many of us have heard this? You probably know someone, or maybe that someone is you, unintentionally, who rarely has a kind conversation with themselves. And when they do, it feels like an emotional boxing match. They criticize each other, reproach each other, throw all their flaws in each other's faces as if they were the only inhabitants of the planet with imperfections. If they treated a friend like this, the poor friend would most likely run away, and rightfully so. Negative self-talk can bring down even the most optimistic. But be careful, it's not because these people are bad, far from it, it's simply because they don't truly know themselves. They haven't had that deep conversation with themselves, the one that starts with, "Who am I?" and continues with, "What am I supposed to be doing with my life?" Many people just go around on autopilot, never asking themselves if they're passionate about what they're doing, if they're headed in the right direction, or if they're just going with the flow because, well, that's where the tide took them. Therefore, the first thing we need, before we set out to conquer the world, is something much simpler and wiser: pause. Breathe. Reflect. Ask ourselves what we want, why we want it, and where we want to go. And with the map more or less clear, then yes, take the first step with humor, with doubts, with emotion, but take it. Is life design made for you? The answer is a resounding yes. However, it's normal for doubts and insecurities to arise when taking the leap toward a freer and more fulfilling life, joining what some call the League of the New Rich. But fear not, here we'll allay those fears and show you that the path can adapt to you, not the other way around. Do I really have to quit my job? Should I be a risk taker? Not at all. There's no need to quit your job immediately or force yourself to take risks that aren't your thing. Whether you prefer to implement smart strategies to gain freedom without giving up the office or build businesses that fund your lifestyle, there's always an option that suits your needs. Imagine, for example, an employee of a large corporation who disappears for a month to explore China's hidden treasures, covering his tracks with the help of technology. Or imagine a business that generates $80,000 a month without requiring constant management. Sound impossible? Here's how to achieve it. Is it only for young singles? Absolutely not. This book is for anyone who's tired of putting off their dreams and wants to live life to the fullest, without excuses. Among the cases we'll explore, you'll find everything from a 21-year-old who drives a Lamborghini to a single mother who traveled the world for 5 months with her 2 children. If you're tired of conventional options and yearn for a broader universe of possibilities, this is your place. Do I have to travel? I just want more time. It's not mandatory. Travel is a possibility, not a requirement. The real goal is to create freedom, of time and space, to use when and how you choose. Should I have been born into wealth? Not at all. My parents never earned more than $50,000 a year combined, and I started working at 14. I'm not a Rockefeller, and you don't need to be either. Is a Harvard degree essential? No. Most of the success stories analyzed don't come from elite universities, some didn't even finish their studies. While prestigious institutions have their advantages, there are invisible benefits to not relying on them. Many graduates from these schools end up trapped in demanding jobs with 80-hour weeks, sacrificing decades of their lives in jobs that exhaust them. Stop for a moment. Who's the only person on this planet I can truly change? Hint: not your mother-in-law, your boss, or the neighbor who drills on Sundays. That's right, myself. I can't change others, although sometimes I feel like it, but I can inspire them, help them think, although the only one who can get moving is me. And who, if not me, can take the helm of my life without getting dizzy in the process? What would you like to change? And don't give me excuses like, I'll start tomorrow, or I don't have time now. We have a whole life ahead of us. Literally. There's no need to run like we're being chased by a flock of hungry seagulls. They say that once upon a time there was an exceptional lumberjack, so good that a foreman hired him and paid him double, since he cut down 3 times as many trees as anyone else. The foreman took him up the mountain, showed him a charming cabin, and showed him all the trees he was to cut down. The lumberjack's eyes widened. All this for me? Really? Yes, you're a genius, that's why you get double the pay. If a normal person cuts down 8 trees a day, you can handle 24. Well, I'm staying here for a while. Don't worry, every week I'll send trucks to carry the wood and bring you whatever you need, yes, even coffee and cookies if you want. The first week he cut down 168 trees. The second, 150. The third, 120. And the fourth, barely 98. The enthusiasm was on a downward spiral like a roller coaster with no brakes. One day, the foreman came up early and watched him. By 5 in the morning, the lumberjack had been swinging the axe with all his might. He didn't even stop to sneeze. "I've come to see you," said the foreman, after a good while of spying behind the bushes. "I'm fine. I think. The first week I worked civilized hours. I'd get up at 7, eat quietly, rest, and continue. But now I get up early, I barely eat, I don't rest, and I'm getting less productive every day. This doesn't make sense." The foreman examined the axe. Dull. Worn. It looked like an old can opener. Not even the thinnest log will give in with this tool. You have to stop and sharpen it. The lumberjack, with a "really" face, replied. "Stop. With all the cutting I have to do, I don't have time for that. And here's the big question, how many of us are so busy that we don't take a minute to sharpen our own axe? And I'm not talking about the gym, although that helps too. How many times do we stop to think about what we want, where we're going, what we're passionate about, what we're really good at, and what makes us happy? Reflect a little. Who is the most important person in the world? No, it's not your favorite artist or the current influencer. It's you. Although we sometimes deny it, we know it. Proof. When we're shown a group photo, the first thing we do is search for ourselves. If we look good, how wonderful the photographer is. If we look bad, that camera is weird. We listen to a recording of ourselves speaking and analyze whether our voice sounds as expected or more like a sped-up squirrel. In a book, if our name appears, we run to find it. Look, I'm here. Self-awareness is part of our nature. The funny thing is, despite that, we take little care of ourselves. We treat our phones better than we treat ourselves. We charge them, protect them with a case, update them, and there we are, running on empty and without pause. We need to recover a healthy sense of selfishness, not to be confused with egocentrism. If I'm well, those around me will be better off too. We'll be more efficient, happier, and less grumpy in line at the supermarket. A tree with weak roots can't withstand the storm. You can't do your best either if you're not well inside. So, before you save the world, check your own roots. Analyze and make decisions. We started by talking about school, and how little they taught us about ourselves, more algebra, less self-esteem, right? But it's never too late to incorporate new ideas, even if they contradict what we've always believed. Many of our rules, beliefs, and prejudices are like invisible fences that hold us back without us even realizing it. They are our paradigms, our personal way of interpreting the world. The world is what it is, yes, but each person perceives it in their own way, with their own combination of experiences, values, and emotions. Sometimes, those values or ideas we believe to be immutable are the ones that prevent us from moving forward. That's why it's worth asking ourselves uncomfortable questions. Why do I think this way? Where does this belief come from? Is it helpful or just limiting? Let's learn to speak a new mental language. And no, you don't need Japanese lessons. Just swapping one word for another can transform your vision. For example, the word problem. It sounds heavy, right? Like a bundle you don't know where to put down. But if instead of problem, we say challenge, things change. A challenge is overcome, faced, and learned from. It almost sounds like an epic quest with music playing in the background. So the next time you have a problem, call it a challenge and look at it differently. It won't magically go away, but at least you'll have a better attitude toward facing it, and that's half the battle won. So-called catastrophizing is a very common cognitive distortion. In fact, we all experience it to a greater or lesser extent. The mind has a special tendency to exaggerate the potential negative consequences of something we're experiencing. It loves to imagine future catastrophes, and, from a biological perspective, we all fall into catastrophic thinking. No one is immune. However, not all of us do it with the same frequency or intensity. Sometimes, this natural tendency of the mind gets out of control, and we begin to constantly think about the worst. Any present situation, even the most mundane, ends up transformed into an epic catastrophe inside our heads. Even if these are extreme and delusional speculations that almost never happen, the way we experience them is absolutely real. The catastrophe hasn't happened, but the speculation doesn't seem like a simple delusion, but rather an unavoidable reality. It's so real and imminent that the most reasonable thing to do seems to be to worry. Imagine a meteorite approaching Earth, that we could see it approaching in the sky, that its impact was inevitable, and that there was no way to escape the cataclysm. The normal thing would be to go crazy with anxiety, right? Well, something like that happens to the catastrophic mind. What it imagines seems so certain and inevitable that obsessive worry and anxiety seem the most logical responses. How can I not worry if my partner is going to leave me? If I'm going to lose my job? If I'm going to get sick? If my reputation will be destroyed? How can you not feel anxious if the worst is about to happen and there's no way to avoid it? It is a dysfunctional state of perpetual worry that leads to anxiety and can ruin the lives of those who fall into this negative spiral. The good news is that we can change this mental behavior. When a setback occurs, catastrophizing naturally arises. The mind attempts to analyze the potential dangers arising from that situation. This can be helpful, as sometimes these processes contain valuable insights that we can use. The problem arises when, instead of perceiving these possibilities as simple options, our thoughts become uncontrollably exaggerated until we are convinced that the worst imaginable calamity will occur. All other alternatives are ruled out. We are certain that this time we will not emerge unscathed. As you can see, this blind faith in our thoughts has a clear metaphysical component. It's a matter of belief. We fervently trust what we think. For us, the mind never makes mistakes, it never suggests nonsense. All it produces are truths of divine quality. This absolute identification with thought is the central problem of catastrophization. The difference between those who experience it mildly and sporadically and those who live constantly expecting the worst lies in that unwavering faith in their own thoughts. While some people don't believe everything that goes through their heads, others can't help but fall into the ego trap. And so, unwittingly, they create the conditions for many of their worst fears to materialize. Catastrophic thinking is an invitation for the problems we so desperately want to avoid to manifest themselves more strongly. An example: if we start a conversation with someone expecting it to escalate into a fight, we become defensive. Our verbal and nonverbal language becomes subtly aggressive. And the other person senses it instantly. We're designed to detect almost imperceptible signals when we communicate. That stiffness and harshness we emit will encourage our interlocutor to defend themselves as well, because, in their case, there are clear signs that things are tense, even if they don't understand why. Family gatherings are a clear example. We often justify ourselves by saying we're feeling defensive because we've had conflicts with that person before. The most sensible thing we can do is not allow ourselves to be treated badly from the start. The problem arises when, even though something may have happened to us in the past, it hasn't yet happened in the present, but our mind already assumes it has. As if it had a half-broken crystal ball, we create a tense atmosphere, a conflict ends, surprise, and we use it as proof that we were right. See? I told you so. Thus, the catastrophizing mind pats itself on the back. In these types of situations, emotions form a strange cocktail, as if a distracted chef had mixed sadness with suspicion and a touch of paranoia. The person prone to catastrophizing clings to their position as if it were the last plank at sea, and accuses the world of being against them. But they also have moments of lucidity in which they wonder if, maybe, just maybe, they themselves are adding fuel to the fire with their defensiveness and bad mood. And what's behind all this? A widespread mistrust. I don't trust myself, I don't trust others, and I don't trust life. The result: anxiety, isolation, loneliness, and a feeling of low spirits. Another classic example: we think our partner is going to leave us. There are no clear signs, but we've already taken it for granted. Our mind becomes a 20-season soap opera. We distrust the other person, we're sure they're already packing their bags, but we also see that this idea has taken root in our heads like a tenant who doesn't pay rent. We don't trust our partner. Or ourselves. And with so much mental drama, we end up creating the perfect conditions for the relationship to fall apart. Bravo, creative mind. So, what can we do to stop this catastrophic thinking that sends us into a spiral of negativity and anxiety? We must restore order to our consciousness. Because catastrophizing is, basically, disordered thinking. Our minds have become a messy closet, and we need to put everything back in its place. Where does so much chaos come from? It comes from something very common: over-identifying with what we think. We give our thoughts the power to dictate reality, as if they were incorruptible judges. But they aren't. They're just thoughts. Mental events that appear and disappear, and which often, most of the time, in fact, are more lost than a tourist without a map. The mind exaggerates, dramatizes, and sometimes invents stories worthy of a movie script. The key is to learn to observe these thoughts from a distance, as if you were watching them from the podium. It sounds difficult, but it isn't. In fact, there's a simple and very effective trick: write. Yes, write down the entire catastrophic sequence. From the first fatalistic thought to the apocalyptic finale. Put it down on paper, without filters. And why write? Because the written word is materialized thought, just as speaking is thought in motion. By writing down what's going through your mind, you bring order to it and, in the process, gain distance. And that's exactly what we need: order and perspective. It's no longer an invisible monster stalking you from the shadows. Now it's there, right in front of you, in black and white, and you can question it. Reading your own madness with a critical eye can give you a rather refreshing dose of reality. In a video on my channel, Titled How to Overcome Anxiety, I explain a simple and very useful technique called creative speculation. If you're interested in breaking out of your mental loop, I encourage you to watch it. The link is in the description. Simply being aware that you're caught in negative thoughts, when you view them from the perspective of an impartial observer, helps them dissolve. Another excellent tool for this is mindfulness meditation. Mindfulness is a practice rooted in Eastern contemplative traditions, particularly Buddhism, but has been widely adopted by modern psychology and medicine due to its proven benefits for mental, emotional, and physical health. One of the most well-known benefits of mindfulness is its ability to reduce stress. Through conscious attention to the present moment, we achieve reduce mental rumination, thinking about problems. Better regulate emotions in difficult situations. Reduce the activity of the sympathetic nervous system, which is responsible for stress responses, such as increased heart rate or muscle tension. Key study: the Mindfulness-Based Stress Reduction (MBSR) program, created by John Kabat-Zinn, has been shown to be effective in reducing stress in patients with chronic pain, anxiety, and other conditions. Practicing mindfulness regularly helps to reduce symptoms of depression and anxiety, increase emotional resilience, promote greater self-compassion and self-acceptance. Clinical example: therapies such as MBCT, mindfulness-based cognitive therapy, combine meditation with cognitive therapy to prevent relapses in depression. The consistent practice of mindfulness improves the ability to focus and sustain attention over time, which is essential for perform tasks more efficiently. Avoid digital distractions and unnecessary multitasking. Make more thoughtful decisions, without impulsive reactions. Practical application: companies like Google, Apple, and General Mills have integrated mindfulness programs into the workplace to increase employee productivity and well-being. Mindfulness also has positive impacts on the body, as it lowers blood pressure, improves sleep quality, reduces inflammation by lowering cortisol levels. It helps in the treatment of chronic pain by changing the way the brain perceives pain. Medical studies have shown that people with cardiovascular disease or cancer experience significant improvements in their quality of life by incorporating mindfulness practices. When you live mindfully, relationships improve because you listen with more attention and presence. We react less automatically and more from empathy. Communication is better handled in times of conflict. Mindfulness programs for couples have shown that practicing together strengthens emotional connection and intimacy. Mindfulness helps us connect with ourselves on deeper levels. This allows us to recognize automatic mental and emotional patterns, become aware of limiting beliefs or internal judgments, open yourself to new ways of experiencing life with curiosity and without prejudice. In the educational field, mindfulness has been shown to be effective for improve students' attention and academic performance, reduce aggression and bullying, promote emotional self-regulation from an early age. In parenting, the concept of conscious parenting promotes a more empathetic, patient, and attentive relationship with children. Neuroimaging studies show that mindfulness can physically change the brain. It increases the density of the prefrontal cortex, which is associated with decision-making, concentration, and self-control. Reduces the size of the amygdala, which is linked to fear and anxiety responses. These changes strengthen the ability to regulate emotions and respond more consciously to the environment. Chapter 2. Productivity. Productivity in our daily lives allows us to make better use of our time, be more efficient, and accomplish more with each task we undertake. It also helps us stay organized, reduce wasted time, and fulfill our obligations. The internet is full of advice on how to optimize our performance, but what happens when we apply these principles to something as vital as our health? Why is it essential to be productive even when it comes to taking care of ourselves? We've all had that moment of inspiration when we promise ourselves to change. I'm going to lose weight, eat better, exercise, gain muscle. For a few days, we become the embodiment of willpower. But, over time, something derails us. Unforeseen events arise, routine sucks, and we give up. What went wrong? The answer lies in time, organization, and, above all, how we apply productivity to our healthy habits. The premise of productivity is based on the idea that time is limited and unchangeable, and that we must use it wisely. This concept is so ancient that even the Iliad mentions how the gods envy mortals for living intensely given the brevity of their existence. However, there is one area where productivity can give us more time: our health. Longevity isn't just a wish, but an achievable goal. Studies suggest that practices like intermittent fasting could increase life expectancy by up to 30%. In concrete terms, that means 21 more years for the average person. It's not just about managing your hours better, but also about investing in additional time through sustainable habits. Our bodies function based on rhythms and habits. The more we automate processes, the less we rely on willpower. For example, waking up at the same time, even on weekends, regulates your biological clock. Cortisol and adrenaline, the hormones that help us wake up energized, adjust to this schedule. If we constantly alter our sleep routine, our body becomes unbalanced, affecting energy, productivity, and the quality of our sleep. Waking up naturally, without an alarm, allows the body to find the optimal time within the sleep cycle, every 90 minutes, facilitating a more refreshed start to the day. The common mistake is trying to change everything at once. The key is progression. Build on existing habits. If you drink coffee every morning, place your omega-3 supplement next to the cup. This way, you associate a new action with an established one. Add small challenges. Once you've established the first habit, add another, such as doing 10 push-ups when you get up. Avoid obsessing over immediate results. Quick fixes, like weight loss pills, often fail. True transformation requires consistency. Imagine the routine of many people. They snooze the alarm over and over again. The first thing they see when they wake up is their phone, not their partner. They rush off to work and eat any processed food for breakfast. Repeat this pattern for years, and the result is clear: overweight, lack of energy, and the question, how did I get here? It's not just about doing more in less time, but about choosing habits that give us more years and a better quality of life. Discipline alone isn't enough. We need smart strategies that are integrated into our daily lives. The most powerful changes are those that become invisible because they are already part of you. The truth is that many of the changes we want to make in our lives go against what our bodies naturally desire: to conserve energy like bears hibernating all year long. And it's precisely because of this energy saving that there is sometimes a huge gap between the life we want to live and the one we're actually living, or between the health we yearn for and the one we actually have. Therefore, one of the most valuable tips for closing that gap and taking a leap toward a more productive life, whether to improve our discipline or simply to stop wandering around like aimless zombies, is to have a powerful emotional reason to change. Something that tells our brain, hey, this is worth the effort. How to use this to your advantage? Simple: on your calendar, your to-do list, a post-it note, or the napkin next to your mate, write down why it's important to do that task and how you'll feel when you've completed it. When our brain receives an emotional reward in advance, it's much easier to take action. It's like a mental bribe, but the good kind. If you're like me, you've probably read 1,000 productivity books, watched videos, listened to podcasts, and even signed up for 3 courses that you never finished. Some tips must have helped, of course, but you still put everything off. And I know this, because I did it too. The problem is that most of those tips don't address the crux of the matter: procrastination. That old friend that always shows up to encourage you to do anything but what you need to do. And when it comes to health, procrastination comes at a steep price. In the long run, it means a poor quality of life, or diseases we could have avoided. So, how do we put an end to this story? First, let's stop thinking that being productive is a matter of willpower or motivation. Because motivation is like Wi-Fi on the beach: it appears once in a while, and when you need it most, it disappears. Instead, let's help ourselves with a little practical philosophy. Let me put it this way: the real secret to productivity is having something to lose. Something that compels you to keep your commitments even when you don't feel like it. An emotional contract with yourself, but a serious one. History is full of examples. Ulysses tied himself to the mast of his ship because he knew he couldn't resist the siren's call. Hernán Cortés burned his ships upon reaching America, forcing himself to move forward without turning back. In both cases, it wasn't a matter of motivation, but pure strategy. Being productive isn't just about having a pretty calendar. You can organize your schedule 20 times, with stickers and colors included, and still not get half done. What really works is establishing a method that pushes you to act, because what's at stake outweighs the fleeting desire to watch another episode of your favorite series. And the best part is that when you finally get over that "I don't want to do it" moment, the task becomes more bearable and even enjoyable. Yes, what once seemed like a punishment now transforms into a moment of satisfaction and accomplishment. Productivity is a concept that transcends the boundaries of the office or work environment. It is, in essence, the ability to generate valuable results by using available resources efficiently. It's not just about doing more things in less time, but about doing the right things, as effectively as possible, with minimal waste of time, energy, or resources. A productive person or company is not one that is always busy, but one that produces results in a sustained and organized manner. Being productive has direct benefits for all aspects of life. On a personal level, it allows you to achieve goals, reduce stress, improve self-esteem, and enjoy your free time more. Professionally, productivity is directly linked to success, as it allows you to deliver better results, seize opportunities, and grow within an organization or as an entrepreneur. In businesses, a productive workforce means greater profitability, improved product or service quality, greater customer satisfaction, and a sustainable competitive advantage. For entire economies, productivity is a driver of development, enabling growth without the need to increase resource use in equal proportion. Numerous factors impact productivity, both at the individual and organizational level. Time management: knowing how to organize your day, prioritize tasks, and avoid distractions is essential. Motivation and purpose: the most productive people tend to have a strong sense of why they do what they do. Physical and mental health: rest, nutrition, exercise, and emotional balance directly influence performance. Work environment: an orderly, bright, and interruption-free environment promotes concentration. Skills and tools: ongoing training and proper use of technology can multiply efficiency. Habits: consistency in positive routines, such as planning your day or reviewing goals weekly, significantly improves productivity. Leadership and organizational culture: in work environments, leaders who inspire and promote collaboration boost team productivity. The 80-20 rule, Pareto principle. This principle states that 80% of results come from 20% of actions. Identifying and focusing on those few tasks that generate the greatest impact can transform the way you work. Pomodoro technique. It consists of working for 25 minutes straight, a Pomodoro, followed by a 5-minute break. After every 4 Pomodoros, a longer break is taken. This technique improves concentration and combats mental fatigue. Eisenhower matrix. It allows you to classify tasks according to their urgency and importance, helping you make better decisions about what to do first, what to delegate, or what to eliminate. GTD, Getting Things Done Methodology. Created by David Allen, this methodology seeks to free the mind from the burden of remembering tasks through an external system of lists and continuous review. This improves mental organization and effective execution. Time blocking. It involves assigning specific blocks of your calendar to complete specific tasks, avoiding multitasking and reserving realistic time for meaningful activities. Weekly review. Setting aside time each week to evaluate accomplishments, mistakes, and next steps helps maintain clarity and alignment with long-term goals. Common mistakes that sabotage productivity. Despite good intentions, many people fall into traps that diminish their performance. Excessive multitasking. The brain isn't designed to perform multiple complex tasks simultaneously. This decreases quality and increases stress. Procrastination. Postponing important things is often due to fear of failure, perfectionism, or lack of clarity. Lack of rest. Working without breaks or quality time to disconnect exhausts the mind and reduces creativity. Disorganization. Lack of clarity about what needs to be done and when to do it creates chaos and low productivity. Not knowing how to say no. Accepting unnecessary tasks or tasks outside our priorities leads to saturation and neglect of the essentials. Personal productivity versus professional productivity. Although they are interrelated, there are subtle differences between the two. Personal productivity relates to efficiency in daily activities, achieving personal goals, managing habits and routines, and developing overall well-being. Professional productivity is more focused on work results, teamwork, meeting deadlines, performance metrics, and contributing to the growth of a company or project. Achieving a balance between the two is crucial to a full and successful life. We can't spend our lives looking for someone to blame for our problems, nor can we believe that everything comes down to luck, as many people think. As Henry Ford famously observed, most people spend more time and energy talking about problems than actually tackling them. We could go into this at length, but it's enough to understand that luck is nothing more than the intersection of opportunity and preparation. The path is built by walking. One of the greatest golfers in history, Severiano Ballesteros, used to say, "The more I practice, the luckier I get." He uttered this phrase after achieving a hole-in-one, when a journalist congratulated him on his good fortune. This is a perfect example of how effort, combined with opportunity, gives rise to what we commonly call luck. A concept that Alex Rovira has masterfully explored in his book La Buena Suerte, Good Luck. It's obvious that if someone doesn't master a language, they won't be able to access a job where they're indispensable. But it's also true that even if you study English for years, that doesn't guarantee that all doors will automatically open. Opportunity and preparation go hand in hand, but only one of them depends entirely on us. We must prepare before we need it, because when opportunity knocks, it doesn't wait. As Voltaire said, luck is what happens when preparation and opportunity meet. In rich and poor countries alike, there are those who progress and those who stagnate, those who are happy and those who are not. Victims complain without taking action, those responsible take charge of their destiny. With enthusiasm, effort, and perseverance, they achieve their goals and, in the process, grow. Problems should not be obstacles, but challenges to overcome. From concern to action. Worrying is thinking about what might happen. Taking care of things is taking action to change it. Let's eliminate the preoccupation that paralyzes us and focus on what we can do. Worrying is only a prelude to action. Real change begins when we decide to take control. The inner life, the great unknown. We live in two parallel realities. The first is external, what we say, do, and project. The second, more intimate, is our inner life, emotions, attitudes, and, above all, the dialogue we maintain with ourselves. This dimension is often the most neglected because no one taught us how to manage it. However, mastering it is the key to stopping feeling like victims and becoming masters of our own destiny. Consistency, the secret to success and happiness. Happiness and success depend largely on consistency, aligning what we feel, think, say, and do. Many fall into monumental contradictions. They want to learn a language, but don't study. They claim to care for their health, but give up at the first hurdle. Trying isn't enough. True transformation occurs when we turn intentions into actions. Be practical. Life is action. Life demands pragmatism. Being practical is: solve problems instead of regretting them. Make decisions clearly. Take advantage of available resources. Step out of your comfort zone without abandoning the essentials: family, health, and well-being. It's not about giving up what nourishes us, but rather about purposefully directing every area of our existence. Let's analyze our resources, identify what's holding us back, and move forward with determination. After all, life isn't a rehearsal, it's our one and only great opportunity. Here's a suggestion for what you can do. Take a moment to write down the problem that worries you the most. Don't let it wander in your mind, shape it with words. Once you've written it down, imagine 3 different paths to solving it. Calmly analyze each one. What are the advantages and disadvantages of each option? After weighing them, choose the wisest alternative and design a concrete plan to carry it out. If the problem seems hopeless, remember the ISP rule: I can, I try, I overcome. Accept what you can't change, focus on what you can, and move forward. Think of 2 moments in your life when you felt genuine joy. What made them special? Describe those moments in detail, as if reliving each sensation. Then, design a strategy to make those experiences happen again. What small but meaningful steps can you take today to get closer to them? Happiness isn't always a coincidence. Sometimes, it's a choice built through deliberate actions. Empathy and responsibility. Look around you. Identify a situation in which someone is suffering injustice or feels vulnerable. Putting yourself in their shoes is the first step. Now, imagine what you would do to help them take control of their circumstances. How would you guide that person toward autonomy? Also, reflect: if you were part of that reality, what would you change to make it more just? Finally, looking back at your own story, have you experienced something similar to what you described in the previous exercise? How did you handle it at the time? This exercise isn't about judging, but about learning. Recognizing our own struggles makes us wiser and, above all, more compassionate toward others. You don't need to have lived through an experience as extreme as Viktor Frankl's in a concentration camp to discover and strengthen our proactivity. Fortunately, everyday life offers us enough mini-dramas, like an endless traffic jam or an argument with a teenager who thinks he knows it all, to train this skill. It's in everyday life that the true ability to stay calm in the storm is forged, or at least not explode like microwave popcorn. From keeping a promise, even if it's as simple as not eating the last cookie, to dealing with an angry customer who arrived during a 2-for-1 promotion. Everything, absolutely everything, is a training ground for our proactivity. And be careful, it's not just about what we do, but also how we say it. The language we use can be fuel or bomb. So, dear reader, I offer you a friendly challenge: try this principle of proactivity for 30 days. You don't have to climb Everest or learn Mandarin Chinese. Just dedicate yourself, during that time, to acting within your circle of influence, that space where you do have power, not simply where you'd like to have it. Start with small commitments and keep them. Be a flashlight in the dark, not a light bulb inspector. Be an inspiration, not a prosecutor. Be part of the solution, not a professional commentator on the problem. Apply this philosophy to your marriage, your family, your workplace, and your school parent WhatsApp group, yes, even there. And please refrain from bringing up other people's flaws as if they were bargains. Don't use your own weaknesses as a universal excuse either. If you screw up, which is normal for the human species, admit it, fix it, and turn it into a learning curve. No external blame or soap opera drama. Focus on what you can truly control, yourself. Your attitude, your reaction, your energy. Look at others' weaknesses with compassion, not with an accusatory finger. The crux of the matter isn't what they do, but how you respond. If you ever catch yourself thinking, the problem is out there, stop as if you'd forgotten to put the rice on the stove. That way of thinking is the problem. People who exercise that small inner freedom every day, that seed of autonomy, allow it to flourish. Those who don't end up being tossed through life like a leaf in a blizzard, living scripts written by others, parents, friends, social media, even yogurt commercials. We are responsible for our effectiveness, our happiness, and yes, many of our circumstances as well. As Samuel Johnson said with his centuries-old wisdom, the source of joy must spring from the mind, and he who ignores this and seeks happiness in external things will waste his life in vain efforts and multiply the sorrows he sought to avoid. Knowing that we are responsible, that we have the ability to respond, is the starting point for being truly effective, and for cultivating all the other habits that make life more than just surviving, living with intention. Chapter 3. Cognitive Restructuring. I don't have a magic recipe for success, but I can give you a surefire way to make a mistake, trying to be liked by everyone. Herbert Bayard Swope. American journalist. First Pulitzer Prize winner. Everything that most people take for granted is probably just a tall tale. Oscar Wilde, The Importance of Being Earnest. We're referring to the central tool of cognitive therapy, thought restructuring, which is based on a fundamental hypothesis. It posits that if we successfully question, discuss, and make our automatic thoughts more flexible, people will begin to feel differently. In the context of family therapy, the hypothesis is similar, albeit with a different approach. We can't always guarantee that the entire family will change, but we can begin the work with the person who comes to the consultation, who is motivated and recognizes that there is a difficulty. Therefore, in this approach, intervening with one member can generate significant change in the system. When we talk about cognitive restructuring, we're referring to several things. First, learning to identify our interpretations and beliefs and becoming aware that, often, it's not what actually happened that causes us discomfort, but rather how we interpret that event. For example, in very difficult situations, such as having experienced a traumatic event, the most painful thing may not be the event itself, but the idea we construct from it. Believing, for example, that I am weak, it's my fault, or I'm worthless, can generate suffering deeper than the event itself. In therapy, we work on precisely these beliefs, with compassion and without judgment, helping the person reframe them. You did the best you could at that time, or you were in a very complex and vulnerable situation. In this sense, psychologist Aaron Beck, unlike Albert Ellis, who had a more confrontational style, proposed the use of Socratic debate, a more subtle technique based on guided discovery. This involves asking open-ended questions that invite reflection, rather than offering direct answers. The idea is that, during the session, the therapist talks less than the client, allowing the client to reach new conclusions on their own. It's true that at times it's necessary to explain concepts such as what anxiety is, how depression manifests, or how a specific technique works. But during the cognitive restructuring process, interventions should ideally be based on strategic questions. These can be found in resources such as Aaron Beck's 1985 book or in other texts such as Mood Management, written by Greenberger and Podesky, Beck's former students. The latter is very accessible and educational, ideal for those just beginning to familiarize themselves with cognitive therapy. A very useful tool in this process is the 3-column diagram, which facilitates understanding of the cognitive model. I borrowed it from the work of Martin Seligman, who used it to teach children to develop more optimistic thinking. This diagram, based on the ABC model, activator, belief, consequence, helps us identify the relationship between a situation, the thought that accompanies it, and the emotion or behavior that triggers it. For example, let's think about a student who fails an exam. The triggering event is receiving the grade. The emotion that emerges may be sadness or frustration, but what mediates between the event and the emotion is the thought, "I'm no good at this, I'll never make it." This thought is what generates the distress more than the fact of having failed. And if we analyze it further, we might discover that other students in the same situation didn't react with the same level of sadness because they interpreted the event differently. That's where the key lies. It's not the event itself, but rather our interpretation of it. And each person interprets it based on their history, their upbringing, and their previous experiences. Therefore, different people can have completely different emotional reactions to the same event. The ideal therapeutic intervention is to help the client first identify the triggering situation, then the emotional, behavioral, and physiological consequences, and finally, explore the thoughts that arose. Questions such as, "What went through your mind? What did you imagine?" help the client identify automatic beliefs such as, "I'm worthless, I always do poorly," or even more functional thoughts such as, "It's just a partial outcome," although these are sometimes overshadowed by more negative thoughts. Comparisons with others can also be used to flex beliefs. For example, how do you think another classmate who also failed felt? This type of question helps the user observe how their thoughts directly influence their emotional state, and how the same situation can be experienced very differently by other people. Cognitive therapy maintains that between the stimulus and the emotional response, there is a process of interpretation. It's not enough to simply say, "If I fail, I feel sad." There's an intermediate step, what I think about what happened. Therefore, if we can identify and modify the most discouraging thoughts, those that are persistent, pervasive, and attributed to oneself, we can generate significant emotional improvement. Returning to the example, if the student thinks, "This is temporary, I only did poorly in this subject," or perhaps the exam didn't accurately reflect the content, their emotional response will be much more manageable. This doesn't mean denying responsibility, but rather adopting a broader, less self-critical view of the problem. In 1999, shortly after leaving an unsatisfactory job and consoling myself with peanut butter sandwiches, I won the gold medal at the Chinese National Kickboxing Championships. It wasn't due to impeccable punching or kicking technique, as I had barely a month of training and accepted the challenge purely out of personal challenge. Furthermore, my fighting style was hampered by a vulnerability, a small head that gave my opponents too many opportunities. However, my success was due to an unconventional approach. I thoroughly studied the rules and discovered 2 loopholes I was able to exploit. The first involved the weigh-in of participants on the eve of the championship. By applying dehydration techniques, similar to those I now teach to weightlifters, I managed to lose 14 kilos in just 18 hours. My weight was 82 kilos at the weigh-in, then rehydrated and reached 96.5 kilos again. This allowed me to compete effectively against opponents in higher weight classes. The second aspect lay in a technical detail in the fine print. If a fighter fell from the elevated platform 3 times in a round, the opponent was awarded the victory by forfeit. I decided to employ this rule as my primary strategy, limiting myself to destabilizing my opponents until I achieved this outcome, which, predictably, didn't please the judges. The result was that I won all my fights by technical decisions and went home with the national championship, an achievement that 99% of the more experienced competitors hadn't achieved. Does pushing opponents out of the ring constitute crossing the boundaries of ethics? From my perspective, no. It's simply about adopting unconventional strategies that transcend official rules to exploit loopholes, as opposed to self-imposed rules. A paradigmatic example of this idea can be found in the Olympic Games. In 1968, during the Mexico City Games, Dick Fosbury revolutionized the high jump with his innovative Fosbury Way. While jumpers at that time typically rotated the outside of their feet in the air and performed jumps reminiscent of hurdles, Fosbury opted for an accelerated run toward the bar, followed by a jump in which he started on one foot, twisted his body, and passed his head over the bar, facing away from it. Although the international judges were skeptical, the public was fascinated. Fosbury cleared a clear jump of 2.22 meters and then increased his personal best to 2.24 meters, securing the gold medal. This innovative style was so impressive that, in 1980, 13 of the 16 Olympic finalists adopted it. Today, strategies such as rapid weight loss and the use of maneuvers to exploit technical details have been integrated into competitions like Sans Ho. I cannot claim responsibility for these methods, but rather observe how sport inevitably evolves by challenging time-honored customs and testing fundamental assumptions. The same is true of life. Change and transformation in our styles and habits are the essence of evolution. Most people walk down the street using their feet. Does that mean I should walk with my hands to stand out? Or that I should wear my underwear untucked just to be different? The truth is, no. Walking with my feet and keeping my clothes in place has worked pretty well for me so far. I don't usually change things that are already working well. Being different only has value when it brings something better, greater efficiency or more fun. If everyone approaches a problem the same way and still gets poorer results, maybe it's time to ask yourself, what if you did exactly the opposite? There's no point in following a formula that clearly doesn't work. No matter how good a cook you are, if the recipe is flawed, the final dish won't magically improve. When I worked in data storage sales, my first job out of college, I realized something important. On my sales calls, I almost never got to speak directly to the person I needed. The reason? Administrative barriers. I found that if I made my calls between 8 o'clock and 8:30 in the morning, or between 6 o'clock and 6:30 in the evening, spending just an hour a day, I avoided the call screeners and, as a result, booked more than twice as many meetings as executives who called during regular office hours of 9 to 5 o'clock. In short, I got twice the results using only 1/8 of the time. From Japan to Monaco, from single mothers traveling the world to multi-millionaire racing drivers, people who achieve success by following unconventional paths tend to share a set of core principles. These rules, while surprisingly consistent with each other, often stray far from what most people consider normal. Below are the essential principles that make the difference. 1. Retirement as a safety net, not a final goal. Planning for retirement is similar to taking out insurance. It's a precaution against the unexpected, in this case, the possibility that a time may come when you can't work and need resources to live. However, considering retirement as the ultimate goal in life is a mistake, and here are 3 compelling reasons. A. It means resigning yourself to a life without passion. If you assume you must endure decades of job dissatisfaction in exchange for a hypothetical future, you are accepting an unnecessary sacrifice. Life shouldn't be a sentence of waiting. Every stage deserves to be lived with purpose. B. The economic reality makes it unsustainable. Even considerable savings are diluted by a retirement that can stretch into 30 years, coupled with the erosion of inflation. What you imagined as golden years can become a struggle to maintain a modest standard of living. C. The abyss of boredom. If you manage to accumulate enough to retire, you're likely someone with an active and ambitious mindset. What happens then? After a few days of rest, inactivity will overwhelm you. Many end up returning to work or embarking on new projects. This doesn't mean you should ignore savings. I myself have pension plans, but as a fiscal tool, not as an ultimate goal. The real goal isn't to stop working, but to build a life that doesn't require escaping from it. 2. Energy cycles, work and rest, don't burn out. Imagine being offered $10 million to work non-stop for 15 years, with the promise of retirement afterward. Would you accept? It would be unsustainable, just like the traditional idea of a career, repeating the same exhausting routine until you collapse or accumulate enough. The result is obvious: prematurely aged 30-something friends, consumed by stress and unhealthy habits. Energy and motivation are cyclical, like the phases of the moon. Forcing yourself to maintain a constant rhythm only leads to burnout. The alternative is to integrate periods of rest and reinvention throughout your life, not accumulate them for a distant retirement. Working when you're most productive and dedicating time to learning or exploring makes you more efficient and happy. Personally, I alternate 2 months of work projects with a month dedicated to traveling or mastering new skills, from tango to martial arts. 3. Less is not synonymous with laziness. Cutting back on trivial tasks to focus on the essentials isn't laziness, even though our culture glorifies empty sacrifice. It rewards being busy over being productive, confusing invested hours with valuable results. True innovators accomplish more in less time because they eliminate the superfluous. True laziness is settling for an existence directed by others, whether out of inertia or the pursuit of riches without living. It doesn't matter how full your bank account is if you spend your life behind a desk, solving trivial problems. The challenge is clear: measure your success by your impact, not your fatigue. Focus on what transcends, not on appearing to strive. 4. There is never a perfect moment. I remember asking my mother how she made the decision to have her first child, me. Her answer was simple and sincere: it was something we deeply wanted, and we realized there was no point in waiting any longer. There's never a perfect time to have a baby. And so it is. For almost everything that's truly important in life, there's no such thing as the perfect moment. Are you waiting for the right moment to change jobs? I'm sorry to say, but the stars rarely align, and life's traffic lights are unlikely to all be green at the same time. It's not that the universe is against you, but it's not going to organize itself to clear the way for you either. Perfect conditions are an illusion. The phrase, "someday," is a trap that threatens to bury your dreams in oblivion. Making lists of pros and cons often only fuels procrastination. If something is valuable to you and you want to do it someday, start today and adjust your course as you go. 5. Sometimes it is better to act than to wait for approval. As long as your decisions don't seriously harm those around you, take the plunge and then explain your reasons if necessary. Parents, partners, bosses, they often deny us things for emotional reasons that, over time, they might understand if they're already a reality. If the risk is moderate or reversible, don't wait for others' permission. The beginning is often the most vulnerable point. When you're just thinking about taking action, everyone feels entitled to their opinion. But once you get going, many prefer not to intervene. Learn to take risks responsibly, and if you make mistakes, also learn to apologize sincerely and make amends with humility. 6. Don't try to fix your weaknesses, enhance your talents. We all have natural abilities in certain areas and obvious deficiencies in others. Personally, I've always been good at imagining products and planning how to sell them, but I struggle with everything that comes after that. Physically, I'm built for lifting weights and throwing things, not dancing or swimming. I tried swimming and looked more like a clumsy seal. I tried basketball and wasn't much better. Until I found the fight, and everything made sense. Leveraging what you do well is more rewarding and satisfying than trying to fix every area where you fail. You can spend years correcting a weakness and, with luck, reach an average level, or you can focus that same effort on your strengths and multiply your achievements. It's not about completely ignoring your weaknesses, but rather focusing on mastering the best of yourself, rather than constantly trying to fix yourself. 7. When something good is exaggerated, it becomes its opposite. Everything, even positive things, can become counterproductive if taken to the extreme. Often, what begins as a noble endeavor ends up becoming the opposite. The passionate search for peace can turn into imposition. The desire to help, into stress. Blessings, into burdens. Abundance, in emptiness. Even free time can become a trap if it's not used purposefully. It's not about having all the time in the world and doing nothing, but rather using that time to do what you truly want, not what you feel you have to do out of obligation. 8. Money alone doesn't solve everything. Although money is a powerful tool, and I personally value it greatly, it's not always the solution we imagine. We often say, if only I had more money, as a way to avoid real, deep introspection about our lives. It's not uncommon to see people trapped in exhausting routines that, deep down, don't provide any meaning. They take refuge in work, in urgent tasks, and thus postpone facing what they really feel. I'd love to talk about this inner emptiness that won't leave me alone, but I have too many things to do. Email after email, calls, pending issues. I don't have time to think anymore. And so the cycle repeats. We cling to being busy as if it heals the soul, but in reality, it may just be a way of avoiding the essentials. The problem isn't just financial, it's a matter of life focus. 9. Relative income matters more than absolute income. There's a long-standing debate about whether all calories are equal. A similar thing happens with money. Is $1 always equal to another dollar? New entrepreneurs, the so-called new rich, don't think so. Imagine this simple equation. Two people earn the same amount of money a year, say, $50,000, but one works 80 hours a week and the other only 10. Who is richer? The answer lies in the value of time. While the first person earns approximately $25 an hour, the second earns $100. Despite having the same annual income, the second person is 4 times richer in relative terms because they have more free time to enjoy or invest in new opportunities. Absolute income covers your basic needs, but once you reach that point, the real luxury lies in the time you can free up. If you make a fortune, but don't have time to live, are you really rich? The new rich know that the goal is not just to earn more, but to earn better, with intelligence, efficiency, and freedom. 10. Stress, 2 sides of the same coin. Not all stress is harmful. In fact, there's a beneficial form that few people know about, eustress, as different from distress as euphoria is from its opposite, dysphoria. Distress is a set of harmful stimuli that undermines confidence, weakens morale, and paralyzes action. Destructive criticism, toxic work environments, or situations that put our well-being at risk are clear examples. This type of stress should be avoided at all costs. On the other hand, eustress, a little-known term, carries in its Greek root, *eu**, meaning good or healthy, the key to its nature. It's the stress that pushes us to surpass our limits, training that transforms our bodies, challenges that take us out of our comfort zone, or examples that inspire us to grow. It's not an enemy, but an ally. Avoiding all criticism or adversity leads to stagnation. The key is discernment, rejecting distress while cultivating eustress. Truly successful people don't seek to eliminate stress completely, but rather to select the stress that propels them toward their goals. The more eustress we incorporate into our lives, the closer we will be to turning dreams into reality. The restructuring of externally imposed rules, especially in organizational, social, and business contexts, involves a complex process of change that seeks to adapt, modify, or transform norms, structures, and behaviors to improve effectiveness, adaptation, and the achievement of objectives. Below, I offer a broad explanation based on different perspectives and areas. Concept and context of restructuring of externally imposed rules. Externally imposed rules are regulations, rules, or guidelines that originate from authorities, governments, regulatory bodies, or environments external to an organization or system. Restructuring these rules involves reviewing, modifying, or adapting them to respond to new needs, contexts, or challenges, such as technological, economic, or social changes. For example, in organizations, these rules may be laws, tax regulations, labor standards, or international policies that must be followed to operate legally and efficiently. Change in organizations, including rule restructuring, is a process that can generate internal and external resistance. Organizations must identify the need for change, which may be technological, structural, cultural, or personnel, to respond to demands such as globalization or market demands. Resistance to change can manifest as disagreement, rejection, or uncertainty among employees, necessitating careful management of the process to facilitate adaptation and understanding. For the effective implementation of external regulatory restructuring, it is essential to have governing bodies and internal regulatory systems that oversee compliance with these regulations. In organizations, the board of directors and specialized committees, such as the audit committee, are responsible for overseeing the company's compliance with external and internal regulatory provisions, proposing improvements to mitigate deviations. In addition, internal regulations should be reviewed periodically, at least once a year, to align with regulatory changes and ensure the organization remains up-to-date and compliant. In the corporate world, restructuring externally imposed rules requires an appropriate legal, regulatory, and accounting environment that facilitates adaptation. For example, during financial crises, countries such as Sweden and Korea have implemented comprehensive restructuring strategies that include legal amendments to allow for complex transactions such as debt-to-equity swaps or asset sales. Good corporate governance, aligned with international standards, incentivizes companies to restructure their balance sheets and operate profitably, which is key to successful restructuring. Although rule restructuring is often analyzed in organizational or social contexts, at the individual level, there is a related concept called cognitive restructuring. This psychological technique seeks to identify and modify externally imposed or assumed dysfunctional thinking patterns that limit well-being or personal performance. This process involves questioning and changing beliefs or automatic thoughts that may be the product of imposed social or cultural norms, promoting a more functional and adaptive vision. In public administration and organizations, the restructuring of external rules is linked to administrative reforms that seek to transform organizational behavior to achieve collective objectives. These reforms assume that it is possible to influence the motives, motivations, and beliefs of actors through incentives, rules, and procedures to achieve coordination and desired outcomes. However, these reforms must consider the multiple assumptions and effects they generate, including the need to define rational collective objectives and the complexity of aligning diverse interests. Reflections and actions. To what extent has being realistic or responsible kept you from the life you want? How has doing what you should have influenced unsatisfying experiences or regrets about missed opportunities? Look at your present and ask yourself, what would happen if I acted differently than those around me? What would I lose if I continued like this for the next 5, 10, or 20 years? Chapter 4. Transformation. Sometimes, when I contemplate the profound consequences that arise from the most subtle details, I'm inclined to believe that, in reality, nothing is insignificant. Every gesture, every moment, no matter how small, carries within its essence the power to change the course of what we call destiny. Bruce Barton, with keen insight, reminds us that small things are not trivial. In the delicate fabric of existence, even the seemingly modest can be the thread that weaves greatness or misfortune. Thus, life teaches us that no action is without echo, no word without a trace. Everything counts. Everything resonates. The transformation begins with you, the art of sharpening the saw. Imagine you're walking through a forest and you find someone working intensely. They're focused on cutting down a tree with a saw, sweating profusely. "What's he doing?" you ask curiously. "Don't you notice?" he replies, visibly irritated. "I'm cutting down this tree." He looks exhausted, you comment. "How long has he been doing this?" "I've been here for over 5 hours, he replies, wiping his forehead. "I'm exhausted." It's not an easy task. "What if he stopped for a moment to sharpen the saw?" you suggest. "Surely he could work more efficiently." "I don't have time for that," he says firmly. "I'm too busy sawing." This story clearly illustrates the essence of the seventh habit, taking time to sharpen the saw. This habit represents a transformative practice that underpins all the other habits. It gives them strength, direction, and continuity. The 4 dimensions of personal transformation. The seventh habit is conscious personal transformation. It means caring for, empowering, and developing your greatest resource, yourself. It involves comprehensively transforming and strengthening the 4 dimensions of your being: physical, spiritual, mental, and social/emotional. Although different authors and philosophical schools of thought use different terminology, many agree that a balanced life is built on these 4 pillars. Philosopher Herb Shepherd, for example, speaks of a harmonious life based on perspective, spiritual, autonomy, mental, connection, social, and tone, physical. George Sheehan, known for his teachings on holistic well-being, identifies 4 fundamental roles: being a good animal, physical, a good craftsman, mental, a good friend, social, and a good person at their core, spiritual. Even modern theories of motivation and organizational management consider these dimensions: the economy, physical, the way we treat people; social, the development of talent and knowledge; mental, and the purpose and meaning of work, spiritual. Sharpening the saw essentially means nurturing these 4 areas. It means living intentionally, balanced, and wisely, recognizing that each of these dimensions requires ongoing care and attention. To achieve this, it's essential to act proactively. Taking time to sharpen the saw is a strategic action in Quadrant 2, important but not urgent activities. These don't just happen, we must consciously activate them. In contrast, Quadrant I, which contains urgent tasks, tends to dominate our time and energy. Transforming oneself is not someone else's job, no one can do it for us. It is a deeply personal responsibility. It requires discipline and commitment until it becomes a natural habit, a way of life. This transformation represents the most valuable investment we can make, investing in ourselves, in the only instrument we have to create, serve, love, influence, and leave a mark. We are the tools of our own existence, and if we want to be effective, we must honor the importance of caring for and strengthening our body, mind, heart, and spirit. The physical dimension, caring for and empowering our body. The physical dimension involves taking effective care of our bodies, eating properly, getting enough rest, and maintaining a consistent exercise routine. Exercise, an investment in health. Physical exercise is one of the most empowering activities in Quadrant 2, important but not urgent, which many of us neglect due to lack of consistency. However, by not practicing it, we end up in Quadrant I, facing health problems stemming from neglect. Some people believe they don't have time to exercise, but this is a misconception. In reality, we don't have time not to. We're talking about just 3 to 6 hours a week, or 30 minutes a day, a minimal investment compared to the enormous benefits it brings to the rest of the 162 to 165 hours a week. Exercise without excessive demands. No specialized equipment is required. While joining a gym or playing sports like tennis or racquetball are valid options, they are not essential. A good exercise program can be done at home, focusing on 3 key areas. Endurance. It is developed through aerobic exercises, improving cardiovascular capacity, the efficient pumping of blood by the heart. Activities such as brisk walking, running, cycling, swimming, or jogging are ideal, as they work the large muscle groups, especially the legs. A person is considered to be in good physical condition when they can maintain their heart rate at least 100 beats per minute for 30 minutes. The optimal goal is to reach 60% of your maximum heart rate, calculated as 220 minus your age. For example, at age 40, the goal would be 108 beats per minute. Flexibility. It is obtained with stretching, recommended before, warm-up, and after, cool-down, aerobic exercise. Warming up prepares your muscles for exercise, while cooling down helps eliminate lactic acid, reducing stiffness and soreness afterward. Force. It is achieved with resistance exercises, push-ups, sit-ups, pull-ups, calisthenics, or weightlifting. The need for strength varies depending on lifestyle. Those who perform physical labor or sports may emphasize it, while sedentary people can maintain good muscle tone with aerobic exercise and stretching. The key: consistency and common sense. A friend who is an expert in exercise physiology once demonstrated a fundamental principle to me: the greatest benefits come at the end of the effort. While lifting weights to the limit, he explained that strength is gained when muscle fibers are broken down and regenerated stronger. However, no pain, no gain isn't a universal rule. The key is to exercise regularly and in moderation, adapting your routine to your personal abilities and avoiding excesses that can cause injury. Final recommendations. Start gradually, especially if you are a beginner. Consult a doctor before starting any intensive program. Listen to your body. Exercise should renew, not exhaust. Renewing our physical dimension isn't a luxury, but a necessity to maintain our ability to work, adapt, and enjoy life. Sharpening the physical saw is an investment in a more fulfilling life. The transformative power of exercise. When you're not in the habit of exercising, your body tends to resist change. It tries to stay in its comfort zone, moving downhill, with the inertia of routine. At first, physical activity may not be enjoyable. It may even provoke a certain aversion. But the key is consistency. Act with determination, stick to your routine regardless of the external conditions. Is it raining the morning of your walk or jog? Don't let that be an obstacle, but an opportunity to strengthen your willpower as well. Say to yourself, "Great. It's raining. Today I will train both my body and my character." Exercise isn't a quick fix or a superficial solution. It's an activity that belongs to the realm of the important, not the urgent, and whose benefits accumulate powerfully over time. Just ask those who exercise regularly. Gradually, the heart becomes more efficient, lung capacity is optimized, and the resting pulse rate decreases. The body responds better to physical demands, and daily tasks become lighter, even pleasurable. You experience greater vitality throughout the day, and the fatigue that previously served as an excuse to avoid exercise is transformed into renewed energy to face any challenge. One of the most profound benefits of physical exercise is that it strengthens our proactivity, that invisible muscle of the first habit of personal transformation. By acting motivated by the value of well-being rather than by excuses or obstacles, our self-image is strengthened, self-esteem grows, personal confidence is strengthened, and internal coherence is reinforced. The dimension of inner leadership. Spiritual transformation is a powerful inner guide that brings direction and meaning to our lives. It is deeply connected to the second habit, beginning with the end in mind. This dimension represents the center of our being, our commitment to the most deeply rooted and transcendent values. It is an intimate, essential sphere, nourished by that which inspires us, elevates us, and connects us to universal truths. And that source of inspiration varies from person to person. In my case, I find transformation in meditating on the scriptures every day. They represent a map of principles that reconnect me with my purpose. This meditation strengthens me, centers me, and commits me to serving others. Others find the same transformation in profound literature, classical music, or the contemplation of nature. Nature, with its serene rhythm and unchanging harmony, offers a unique form of inner restoration. Getting away from the hustle and bustle of the city and surrendering to the silence of nature can offer us a state of calm so profound that, for a moment, nothing can disturb us. Even if the outside noise returns later, we carry a seed of serenity within. Arthur Gordon shared a moving account of his own spiritual transformation in a text titled The Turning of the Tide. At a time in his life when everything seemed meaningless and his creativity had dried up, he decided to consult a doctor. Finding nothing physical, the doctor suggested an exercise: spend a full day in the place where he had been happiest as a child. No reading, no writing, no conversation. Just being. She handed him 4 notes with instructions to read at different times of the day. The first, at 9 o'clock, said, "Listen carefully." Reluctantly, Gordon obeyed. First he listened to the waves and birds, then he began to hear more subtle sounds. He remembered the teachings of the sea: patience, respect, connection. A quiet peace began to nestle within him. The second note, at noon, read, "Go back in time." He immersed himself in memories of his childhood and rediscovered moments of true joy. Reliving them gave him a warmth he hadn't felt in a long time. At 3 in the afternoon, he read the third note, "Examine your motives." This time, it was more difficult. He realized that his desire for success and recognition wasn't enough to fill his inner emptiness. He understood that the true meaning of life lies in serving, in contributing to the well-being of others. He wrote, "If the motives are wrong, nothing can be right. Work is noble when it is done from a desire to help." At 6 o'clock, the last instruction read, "Write your worries in the sand." So he did. He stood up, walked away without looking back, and let the sea take care of the rest. This kind of transformation requires time and presence. But it's a fundamental practice that we can't afford to neglect. Spiritual leader Martin Luther King Jr. is said to have once said, "I have a lot to do today, so I need to spend 1 more hour on my knees." For him, prayer was not a formality, but an inexhaustible source of energy. A Zen master from the Far East, known for his serenity under any pressure, was asked about his secret. He replied simply, "I never leave my meditation place." He began each day with that sacred space, and then carried that peace with him throughout the rest of the day. When we take the time to connect with our deepest selves, to remember who we are and what we truly value, everything else aligns with that clarity. Transformation happens from the inside out. That's why I consider it essential to have a personal mission statement. If I know my purpose and guiding principles, I can remind myself of them and realign myself with them every day. Through daily spiritual transformation, I can visualize and live my actions in harmony with my values. The Master David O. McKay wisely stated, "Life's most important battles are fought daily in the quiet chambers of the soul." When we win that internal battle, peace is present. And as a natural consequence, external victories, collaborating, celebrating the good of others, feeling joy in shared achievements, come fluidly and authentically. To a large extent, our intellectual development and our study skills come from formal education. However, once we are freed from the external structure of school, many of us allow our minds to stagnate. We abandon in-depth reading, avoid exploring new topics beyond our professional sphere, abandon analytical thinking and reflective writing. At least, we no longer write critically or with the intention of honing our ability to express ourselves clearly and precisely. Instead, we spend hours in front of the television. According to studies, in most homes, television is watched between 35 and 45 hours a week, a time comparable to that spent at work and even more than that spent at school. This medium has become the most influential tool for socializing. By exposing ourselves to its content, we absorb, often imperceptibly, the values and messages it conveys. Mindful television viewing requires applying the third habit, using discernment to select informative, inspirational, or entertaining programs that align with our principles and goals. In my family, we limit viewing to approximately 7 hours per week, or an average of 1 hour per day. During a conversation at home, we reflected on the impact of television on households, and by analyzing it calmly and without tension, we recognized how easy it is to develop an unhealthy dependence on certain programs or series. I am grateful to television for its provision of quality, educational content that enriches our lives and contributes to our goals. However, many programs only encourage wasting time or, worse yet, negatively influence us. Just like with the body, television is a good servant but a terrible master. We must exercise self-discipline to take advantage of this resource without allowing it to dominate our minds. Lifelong learning, that which constantly expands and refines our intellect, is essential for mental renewal. Sometimes it involves structured academic training, but often it arises from proactive initiatives. Visionary people find countless ways to cultivate themselves. An invaluable exercise is training the mind to analyze its own patterns from a critical perspective. For me, this defines humanistic education, the ability to examine our beliefs under other paradigms, questions, and higher purposes. Without this approach, knowledge becomes limiting, as we never question its foundations. Therefore, it is crucial to read widely and engage in dialogue with the great minds of history. There's no better way to enrich the mind than to cultivate the habit of reading quality literature. Classics, autobiographies, publications like National Geographic, and specialized works broaden our horizons and sharpen our thinking, especially if we read with empathy, practicing the fifth habit. If we judge hastily based on our experience, we miss the opportunity to learn deeply. Writing is another powerful tool. Keeping a personal journal where we record reflections, lessons learned, and experiences fosters mental clarity and precision. Similarly, writing meaningful letters, which transcend the superficial to communicate profound ideas, strengthens our capacity for reasoning and expression. Planning and organizing are key forms of mental renewal linked to habits 2 and 3. It involves starting with a clear purpose and visualizing the path toward achieving it, using your imagination to anticipate challenges and solutions. It's said that battles are won in the general's mind. Sharpening the saw in the physical, spiritual, and mental dimensions is achieved through what I call the daily private victory, dedicating 1 hour a day, for life, to self-development. There is no more valuable investment of time. This practice influences every decision, improves daily effectiveness, and even the quality of sleep. It builds the resilience needed to face future adversities. Character is forged day by day. When times of trial arrive, we will be prepared to overcome them with integrity. The choice is now: will we cultivate the discipline that will lead us to triumph, or will we allow neglect to lead us to failure? Personal transformation is a profound and intimate process through which a person experiences a significant change in their way of being, thinking, feeling, and acting. It is not simply a modification of superficial habits or attitudes, but rather an internal evolution that can encompass all aspects of life, from the way one relates to oneself to how one interacts with the world around them. This type of transformation often arises from a need for change, sometimes triggered by a crisis, a loss, a moment of introspection, or a persistent feeling of dissatisfaction with one's current life. Other times, it's motivated by a deep desire for growth, to reach one's personal potential, or to live with greater authenticity and purpose. In either case, personal transformation doesn't happen overnight. It's a journey, often long and full of ups and downs, that requires commitment, courage, and emotional openness. Personal transformation generally goes through several stages. One of the first is awareness, when a person recognizes that something in their life needs to change. This stage is often accompanied by feelings of discomfort, confusion, or frustration, but also hope. It is the moment when one begins to question the internal narrative, inherited beliefs, repetitive patterns, and fears that have limited the expansion of one's being. Then comes introspection, a period of inner observation. Here, the person turns honestly to themselves, reviewing their past, their wounds, their deepest values and desires. This internal examination allows them to identify the roots of their discomfort and uncover hidden or repressed aspects of their personality. It is a time of revelation, but also of mourning. Often, we must let go of old versions of ourselves that no longer serve us. Next, we enter the conscious action stage, where we begin to implement real changes in our daily lives. This may involve setting new boundaries, leaving toxic relationships, adopting healthy habits, learning to say no, expressing repressed emotions, seeking therapeutic or spiritual help, among other things. This stage is key because it transforms knowledge into experience, theory into practice, and intention into reality. Personal transformation is not an easy process. It involves unlearning much of what one believed to be true, facing one's own shadows, and taking responsibility for the life one is creating. Fear of change, ego resistance, social or family pressure, impatience to see immediate results, and even nostalgia for the familiar, even if it hurts, are common obstacles along the way. Often, a person must go through what Carl Jung called the dark night of the soul, a period of emptiness, confusion, or deep pain in which one's sense of direction is temporarily lost. But it is precisely in this emptiness that the possibility of renewal arises, like a seed that must decompose before giving rise to a new plant. There are many tools that can support the process of personal transformation. Meditation and mindfulness help cultivate presence and observe thoughts without identifying with them. Therapeutic writing allows us to express and organize emotions. Reading personal development books, attending workshops, coaching, psychological therapy, or spiritual practices, such as yoga, prayer, or ancestral rituals, can also offer clarity and support. Furthermore, surrounding yourself with people who support change, inspire, and are non-judgmental can be crucial. Solitude is sometimes necessary, but human connection is also a transformative force. Sharing the process with others helps you understand that change is not a solitary path, but a journey shared by many. When a person undergoes a process of authentic personal transformation, they begin to live from a new perspective. They can rediscover their life purpose, experience a deeper sense of inner peace, let go of old grudges, develop compassion for themselves and others, and cultivate healthier and more meaningful relationships. Inner growth inevitably translates into outer transformation, decisions, goals, the way they speak, love, and work. Everything begins to reflect the new version of themselves. Personal transformation isn't a fixed destination. Rather, it's a continuous state of evolution, a vital commitment to change, expansion, and self-knowledge. It means choosing, time and again, the most courageous, authentic, and loving version of yourself, knowing that the process never ends, but that every step counts. Chapter 5. Creativity and Imagination. First, let's debunk the myth, creativity isn't just about painting pictures or singing like an angel. Stop thinking that only artists are creative. Creativity is like ketchup, it can be used for almost everything. From solving a math problem to inventing an app that reminds you where you put your keys, because, let's be honest, your brain at 8 a.m. is like a messy closet. In the uncertain future that awaits us, with robots, artificial intelligence, and maybe even mutant bananas, your children will need to reinvent themselves, creating their own professions or projects. And for that, creativity will be as essential as knowing how to use a microwave without burning the popcorn. Imagination, the first step before stumbling. Now, let's talk about imagination, that wonderful crazy thing that lives in our heads. Imagination is the eraser of creativity. It's when your brain plays God and thinks things like, what if I made a machine to straighten bananas? Yes, my grandfather had such glorious ideas. But here comes the drama. What in your mind is a masterpiece can end up as a catastrophic banana mash in reality. Because, of course, in your imagination everything is perfect. Bananas write themselves, inventions work right the first time, and no gravity can ruin your dreams. But when you put it into reality, boom! You discover that bananas break, machines won't start, and life throws you curveballs, like the fact that physics exists. Imaginative or creative? That's the dilemma. Here's the crux of the matter. There are highly imaginative people who aren't creative at all. They're the ones who throw around 1,000 ideas in 5 minutes. Let's make a flying car. No, a submarine with wheels instead. Or a toaster that sings flamenco, but they never get anything done. Working with them is like trying to catch a helium balloon. Just when you think you've got it, bam! They come up with something else and it flies away. The problem is serious, my friends. Because there's no point in having brilliant ideas if you don't know how to bring them to life. Creativity is just that, transforming I see it in my head into here it is, and it works, or at least, this won't explode, so we're on the right track. How to train creativity without dying in the attempt. That's why I insist so much on children making their inventions a reality. It doesn't matter if they create it with Play-Doh, Lego, or a drawing that looks like the work of a drunken octopus. The important thing is that they practice that leap from imagination to reality. Is your drawing ugly? Perfect. We're not looking for the next Picasso, but rather for you to learn how to communicate your ideas. My sketches for illustrators are like the scribbles of a 3-year-old, but they're understandable, more or less. The prototype doesn't work. Even better. This way, they learn to improve, adapt, and not give up when life tells them, sorry, bananas won't straighten up. Conclusion, so you don't forget. Imagination equals abstract ideas, the fantasy world in your head. Creativity equals concrete ideas, what you do with them in the real world. The future belongs to those who know how to move from one to the other. So, get inventing. Even if your banana straightening machines end up making compote. The important thing is to practice, make mistakes, and laugh in the process. Because, after all, life is like a banana. Sometimes it's crooked, but you can always make something interesting out of it. And if you don't believe me, ask my grandfather. He probably had an invention for that. We often think of creativity as a binary quality, either you have it or you don't. We believe that being creative is a kind of gift you're born with, a privilege reserved for a select few. And if you're not part of that select group, then you resign yourself to the belief that you'll never be able to create anything valuable or innovative. But is it really like that? Based on my experience, I'm convinced it isn't. Creativity isn't a magical or exclusive talent, but a skill. And like any other skill, it can be trained, nurtured, and improved with practice, patience, and dedication. In recent years, I've become interested in activities considered artistic or creative: photography, music, writing, animation, and even creating videos like this one. Along the way, I've learned that it's not always easy to stay inspired. There are times when ideas just don't flow, when the mind feels stuck, and it's in those moments that we most need the tools to keep moving forward. Today I want to share with you 7 simple but powerful habits that have helped me keep my creativity alive, even on the darkest days. 1. Take care of your physical and mental health. It might seem like being creative means spending all day indoors, writing a novel, composing a song, or painting non-stop. But in reality, to keep your mind functioning at its best, you need to start by taking care of your body. Exercise regularly, eat well, and get enough sleep. Physical well-being is the fuel your mind needs to generate ideas. A rested mind and a healthy body create the ideal environment for the best ideas to emerge. 2. Walk without distractions. This habit is as simple as it is powerful. Go for a walk without listening to music, without podcasts, without looking at your phone. Just you and your thoughts. Breathe fresh air, feel your surroundings, notice what's around you. Walking stimulates the flow of ideas. Many of my best reflections have come during a leisurely walk. If you can, go to the park, the countryside, or just take a stroll around your neighborhood. You don't need to go far. The important thing is movement and allowing your mind to wander without pressure. 3. Write in a creative notebook. Get a notebook dedicated exclusively to your ideas. Write in it every day, even if it's just for a few minutes. It doesn't matter if what you write seems meaningless at first. The goal is to create the habit and train your mind to express itself freely. I write for 10 minutes a day, unfiltered. Sometimes incredible ideas for future projects emerge, other times I just write whatever comes to mind. But when I review those pages afterward, I always find something valuable. Don't judge your ideas as you write them. Allow yourself to be spontaneous. That freedom is the first step toward authentic creativity. 4. Consume quality content. Creativity doesn't emerge from nowhere. It's fueled by everything we absorb. The more information, knowledge, and experiences you accumulate, the more connections you'll be able to make between different concepts. Read books, watch movies, listen to music, visit museums, talk to interesting people. It all adds up. Even listening to music while you work can inspire you in unexpected ways. The key is to keep an open and curious mind. 5. Practice some artistic activity. You don't need to be an expert to benefit from art. Painting, drawing, sculpture, theater, music, and photography are wonderful gateways to the creative world. For example, I play the piano. In addition to helping me relax, it allows me to connect with my emotions and explore ideas from a different perspective. If you're just starting out, choose an activity that doesn't require years of practice. Drawing or photography, for example, are more accessible for beginners and will allow you to flow more freely. 6. Meditate and rest your mind. Our minds need breaks. They shouldn't be active or constantly receiving information. Sometimes we think that resting means checking social media, but that actually only saturates our attention more. Meditation is an excellent tool for giving your mind a break. You don't need to become an expert or meditate for hours. You can start with 3 to 5 minutes a day, focusing on your breathing or a soft sound. Over time, you'll notice greater mental clarity and a better creative mood. 7. Allow yourself to be bored. We live in an age where boredom seems to be the enemy. As soon as we feel a moment of stillness, we reach for a screen or some external stimulus. However, boredom has a hidden value. It forces your mind to seek new paths, to imagine, to create. Disconnect for a while. Do nothing. Let your mind wander. Many of the activities we mentioned earlier may seem boring at first, like aimless walking or writing, but it's precisely in this apparent monotony that the most original ideas flourish. Imagination and productivity, although often considered separate concepts, one associated with art, dreams, and fantasy, and the other with work, efficiency, and tangible results, are actually deeply intertwined. Imagination isn't just a resource for creatives or dreamers, it's an essential tool for anyone seeking to be truly productive. When activated, it allows us to break out of rigid mental patterns, find innovative solutions to old problems, visualize goals clearly, and shape new ways of organizing time and resources. Imagination is the invisible laboratory where ideas are tested before being put into practice. Every breakthrough, every improvement, every productivity strategy originates in a moment of imagination, someone visualizing a new way of doing things. In that sense, imagination is the prelude to productivity. It's not just about dreaming, but about dreaming with direction, with purpose. We imagine to anticipate, to improve, to design more efficient structures, to create sustainable habits that help us achieve goals. A mind that cultivates imagination is a mind that allows itself to question the status quo. In the world of productivity, this translates to not accepting that there is only one way to do things. For example, someone who works in administration can imagine a new way to organize workflow, automate repetitive tasks, or motivate their team. An entrepreneur can visualize not only their final product, but also the most efficient way to develop, distribute, and position it in the market. Each of these steps is born in the fertile ground of imagination. Furthermore, imagination is the best antidote to stagnation. When routine threatens to make us lose enthusiasm, the ability to imagine different scenarios renews us. It connects us with the what if that ignites the spark of innovation. A worker who feels trapped in monotony can turn to imagination to rethink their environment, their methods, or even their long-term goals. This visualization is the first step toward transformation. In neurological terms, imagination activates brain regions similar to those we use when planning or solving problems. In other words, imagining isn't wasting time, it's training the brain to be more agile, more creative, and therefore more efficient. In fact, the most productive moments often follow periods of reflection, rest, or even apparent disconnection, those moments when the imagination works in the background, connecting ideas, combining concepts, generating new perspectives. There is also a direct relationship between imagination and goal setting. The most successful people, in any field, are those who have learned to accurately imagine what they want to achieve. They visualize their goals in detail, how they will feel when they achieve them, how they will organize their time, what steps they must take. This clear vision is a powerful source of motivation and focus. Without imagination, goals are abstract; with imagination, they become tangible. In the field of work, teams, fostering collective imagination, through brainstorming sessions, lateral thinking dynamics, or spaces that allow for free expression, can be key to increasing overall productivity. An environment in which novel ideas, even risky ones, are valued is one in which innovation and efficiency flourish. Productivity ceases to be simply doing more in less time and becomes doing better, with less wear and tear, with greater impact. Finally, imagination also plays an essential role in the emotional balance that every productive person needs. It allows us to project ourselves into positive futures, visualize solutions in times of crisis, and generate internal narratives that propel us forward rather than hold us back. By imagining desirable futures, we equip ourselves with purpose, with emotional energy that translates into concrete action. Practical examples: how imagination boosts productivity. The visualization method of high-performance athletes. Many Olympic athletes use visualization techniques before competing. They imagine every step of their routine in detail, every movement, even every breath. This mental exercise strengthens the neural connections associated with actual performance. What does this have to do with productivity? Everything. A professional can use this same technique to visualize how they will deliver a presentation, manage a negotiation, or face a demanding workday. This imaginative preparation reduces stress and improves performance. The case of Thomas Edison. Edison was not only a prolific inventor, but also an example of how consistently applied imagination produces results. Before developing any invention, he imagined the problem it would solve, how people would interact with it, and what obstacles would arise. He didn't imagine for the sake of art, he imagined with purpose. His legendary phrase, "Genius is 1% inspiration and 99% perspiration," doesn't negate imagination. On the contrary, it suggests that the imaginative spark is what initiates all the productive work that follows. Tech companies and ideation sessions. Companies like Google, IDEO, and Tesla have turned imagination into a strategic axis. They don't just work with mechanical efficiency, but rather cultivate environments in which people can imagine radical solutions. Design thinking sessions, for example, promote the freedom to imagine products or services centered on human needs before moving on to execution. It is in this creative space where truly disruptive productivity is born. Strategies to link imagination and productivity in your daily life. Spaces of free thought. Dedicate at least 10 to 15 minutes a day to unrestricted thinking. No lists, no tasks, no limits. Just you, a blank sheet of paper or notebook, and a question like, what if? This imaginative space can lead to new ways of solving things that seem routine or stressful today. Before starting a workweek, use a mind map instead of a linear list. Imagine connections between tasks, identify possible shortcuts or merges, and visualize how one activity can feed into another. This approach not only activates your creativity but can help you be more efficient by seeing the bigger picture. What if you transformed your day into an adventure? Imagine your day as a novel. You are the protagonist, and every obstacle, meetings, to-do lists, emails, is a mission. This simple shift in focus turns monotony into a narrative, which not only increases motivation but also makes you more resilient and committed. Sometimes the mind stagnates because the environment doesn't change. Work one afternoon from a different cafe, redecorate your space, add different music, use visuals that spark your divergent thinking. Imagination and environment go hand in hand. A fertile environment invites new ideas, which then translate into more productive solutions. In today's era, many fall into the trap of toxic productivity, doing more for the sake of doing more, without direction, without soul, without purpose. Imagination saves us from that emptiness. It reminds us of the why of what we do. It allows us to pause, reflect, and redesign the path if necessary. Being productive isn't just about ticking boxes, it's about creating a life that makes sense. And for that, you need imagination. Quotes and thoughts to inspire you. Albert Einstein said, "Imagination is more important than knowledge." Knowledge is limited, while imagination encompasses the world. This quote sums up the power of dreaming with intention. Knowledge can execute, but only imagination can guide us toward the truly new. David Allen, author of the GTD, Getting Things Done, system, states, "Your mind is for having ideas, not for holding them." This principle encourages the use of external tools, planners, apps, to free the mind, allowing it to operate at its best, imagining, combining, creating. Renowned choreographer Twyla Tharp once wrote, "Creativity is a habit, and the best habits are built with discipline." This leads us to an essential conclusion: imagination is not incompatible with productivity, rather, it is strengthened by it. When spaces are organized, time is respected, and focus is trained, imagination flourishes. Imagination isn't a distraction from productivity, it's its deepest root and most powerful catalyst. Those who imagine, project. Those who project, plan. And those who plan with imagination, execute with purpose. In a world that sometimes values speed over direction, imagination is the rudder that allows us to navigate with purpose. It's an internal compass that guides us toward ways of being more efficient, but also more human, more innovative, and more connected to what truly matters. Chapter 6. Technology allied to productivity. The relationship between technology and productivity has evolved significantly over time and is now evident in virtually every area of work, school, and personal life. Technology, in its many forms, acts as a cross-cutting tool that optimizes processes, reduces execution times, automates repetitive tasks, and facilitates data-driven decision-making. From the development of simple calculators to the implementation of advanced artificial intelligence, technology has been intimately linked to the human desire to do more in less time and with greater precision. One of the areas where this relationship becomes most evident is in the use of specialized software. Project management applications such as Trello, Asana, Notion, or Monday allow for clear visualization of tasks, assignment of responsibilities, and real-time progress tracking. These platforms facilitate remote collaboration, eliminate confusion, and help maintain alignment among geographically dispersed teams. Added to this is the proliferation of instant communication tools, such as Slack or Microsoft Teams, which are replacing traditional email in many contexts and fostering more dynamic and efficient interaction between members of an organization. Another fundamental aspect is process automation. Thanks to tools like Zapier, Make, or Power Automate, it's possible to connect multiple applications together, so that an action on one platform automatically generates a reaction on another. This eliminates routine tasks such as sending emails, updating databases, or creating reports. In more complex business environments, ERP, enterprise resource planning, and CRM, customer relationship management, systems integrate functions such as finance, logistics, sales, and customer service, centralizing information and reducing duplication of effort. Cloud computing has been another decisive evolutionary leap. Platforms like Google Workspace and Microsoft 365 have revolutionized the way information is created, shared, and edited. The ability to access documents from any device and location, as well as to collaborate in real time, has radically transformed work environments. This ubiquitous access has also enabled unprecedented flexibility in work schedules and modalities, making remote work a viable and efficient option for millions of people. Furthermore, advances in artificial intelligence and machine learning are driving a new production paradigm. AI algorithms can analyze large volumes of data in seconds, identify patterns, and predict behaviors, allowing businesses and professionals to make better informed decisions. Tools such as intelligent virtual assistants, for example, chatbots based on natural language processing, not only alleviate repetitive workloads in customer service, but also offer internal support to employees and automate complex information flows. Mobile technology has also played a central role. The proliferation of smartphones, tablets, and wearable devices has allowed people to be permanently connected to their workspaces. Mobile productivity apps, smart planners, contextual reminders, and continuous synchronization between devices foster a culture of efficiency that transcends the physical boundaries of an office. Likewise, the incorporation of wearable technology such as smartwatches or headsets with built-in virtual assistants allows many productive tasks to be performed even while on the go. Another area that has gained prominence is time analysis and personal management. Apps such as Rescue Time, Toggle, and Clockify allow users to record time usage across different platforms, providing clear metrics on work habits and concentration levels. This quantification of daily activity allows individuals to adjust their routines, identify distractions, and focus their energy on the highest impact tasks. Additionally, many of these tools are combined with proven productivity techniques, such as the Pomodoro technique or the Getting Things Done (GTD) method, creating hybrid systems in which technology facilitates the disciplined application of personal organization methods. In industrial settings, the incorporation of technology has been equally revolutionary. Industry 4.0, with the implementation of IoT sensors, big data, and cyber-physical systems, has optimized production and logistics chains. The interconnection between machines and digital platforms enables real-time adjustments, predictive maintenance, and a reduction in human error. Advanced robotics, both in industrial processes and services, frees workers from physical or dangerous tasks, allowing them to focus on tasks of greater intellectual or creative value. In the educational and training fields, technology has multiplied the possibilities for accessing knowledge and developing skills. Platforms such as Coursera, edX, Udemy, and Khan Academy enable self-directed learning, providing flexibility and customization in training processes. This translates into a more skilled and up-to-date workforce, which directly impacts organizational productivity. Furthermore, the use of progress tracking tools, gamification, and content customization allows for more efficient learning and tailored to individual needs. It's also important to highlight the role of technology in creating healthier and more sustainable work environments. Digital wellness apps, AI-assisted ergonomics, scheduled breaks, and self-care reminders are part of a new ecosystem where productivity is measured not only in terms of output, but also in terms of balance, well-being, and long-term sustainability. Environmental sensors and smart HVAC and natural light systems, for example, improve the physical conditions of the work environment, positively impacting workers' concentration and energy. The role of technology as a productivity enabler is also reflected in the personalization of the digital work environment. Today, operating systems and applications allow for detailed configuration based on user preferences. Virtual desktops, keyboard shortcut automation, customized templates, and virtual assistants allow each person to configure their digital space in a way that minimizes friction and maximizes efficiency. These customizations not only improve task execution speed but also improve overall user well-being by reducing cognitive fatigue caused by disorganized or unintuitive environments. In the context of commerce and services, technology has enabled the implementation of solutions that optimize customer service, logistics, inventory, and sales operations. Intelligent point-of-sale systems, e-commerce platforms with real-time analytics, and artificial intelligence-based recommendation systems allow companies to offer more agile, efficient, and personalized experiences. Chatbots, virtual assistants, and digital self-service systems, available 24/7, allow businesses to operate continuously without the need for constant human presence, dramatically increasing operational productivity. Likewise, technology facilitates interoperability between platforms. APIs, application programming interfaces, allow different programs or systems to communicate with each other, share data, and act in coordination. This means that a company can integrate its accounting system with its CRM, its online sales system, and its data analytics platform, reducing duplication and improving the consistency and updating of information in real time. This continuous flow of data, without constant human intervention, allows for faster, more reliable, and evidence-based decisions. In the field of business intelligence, the ability to collect, process, and visualize data has generated new dimensions of productivity. Tools such as Tableau, Power BI, and Google Data Studio transform complex data sets into interactive and understandable dashboards, facilitating predictive and prescriptive analysis. This allows leaders and department heads to identify bottlenecks, detect opportunities for improvement, and anticipate problems before they negatively impact results. Productivity is boosted not only by improving existing processes but also by opening up new strategic possibilities through in-depth data analysis. On the creative front, technology has also been a key ally. Graphic design tools like Adobe Creative Cloud, Figma, and Canva have reduced the learning curve required to produce high-quality visual content. At the same time, audio and video editing platforms like Audacity, DaVinci Resolve, and Adobe Premiere allow professionals and amateurs to create audiovisual products with unprecedented efficiency. Even in writing and idea generation, artificial intelligence is being used to assist with editing, proofreading, drafting, and suggesting themes. This co-creation between humans and technology is driving creative productivity to new heights. In the field of workplace health and well-being, technology is promoting a culture of sustainable productivity. Apps that monitor stress levels, sleep quality, and physical activity cycles integrate with time management systems to recommend active breaks, stretching, or moments of disconnection. Smart desks, which automatically adjust their height to encourage standing or sitting at specific times of the day, are examples of how technology can encourage healthier habits without affecting productivity, and even enhance it, thanks to improved physical and mental well-being. Cybersecurity, although often viewed as a barrier or cost, also contributes to productivity by protecting the constant and reliable flow of information. Encryption systems, multi-factor authentication, automated backups, and access management allow technological operations to run securely and without interruptions. Confidence in technological infrastructure is essential so that users can focus on their tasks without fear of data loss or cyber attacks disrupting their work. The impact of technology on knowledge management must also be considered. Collaborative documentation platforms such as Confluence, Notion, or Google Docs allow for the construction of shared knowledge bases, which serve as a constant reference for new employees, growing teams, or evolving initiatives. This prevents the loss of critical information and reduces learning and transition times between roles or projects. Knowledge is no longer confined to individuals and becomes a shared and accessible asset, which increases collective productivity. On the other hand, advances in augmented reality, AR, and virtual reality, VR, are beginning to redefine productivity standards in sectors such as manufacturing, technical training, architecture, and medicine. Through immersive simulations, workers could train in realistic scenarios without physical risks or material costs. Visual instructions superimposed through AR headsets can guide operators in real time, reducing errors and execution times. These emerging technologies not only improve individual productivity but also optimize training and the quality of the final work. Collective intelligence has also found a technological platform for its most productive expression. Open source platforms, collaborative innovation communities, specialized forums, and professional social networks such as GitHub, Stack Overflow, and LinkedIn allow for knowledge sharing, queries resolved, and solutions co-created at an accelerated pace. This global collaborative ecosystem, enabled by technology, increases productivity by converting the dispersed knowledge of thousands of individuals into an organized, shared force applicable to complex problems. Chapter 7. Living the 240-minute workweek. Experiencing the workweek is an experience deeply rooted in the social, economic, and emotional dynamics of contemporary life. From the moment Monday morning begins, the body and mind tune into a rhythm that combines urgency, automatism, expectations, and learned routines. The sound of the alarm clock marks the beginning of a day that is often predetermined. You have to get up, prepare your body to present yourself to others, perhaps in an office, a factory, a video call, a store, or on a commute that, day after day, becomes as familiar as it is monotonous. The coffee, the quick or non-existent breakfast, the brief greeting to family or housemates, the movement through crowds, or the early lockup in front of a screen, all are part of an unwritten choreography that millions of people repeat without often asking why. Each day carries its own symbolic weight. Monday is often perceived as the silent enemy that marks the end of weekend freedom. There's a psychological weight to Monday that doesn't respond so much to its actual content as to cultural expectation. It's associated with a return to obligation, productivity, and external and internal vigilance. Tuesday feels like a forced continuation, an echo of Monday that doesn't yet bring the promise of rest. Wednesday, known as the navel of the week, can spark a small spark of relief. The week is halfway through, and the weekend is beginning to loom on the emotional horizon. Thursday mixes tiredness with anticipation. It's not yet Friday, but it's already approaching it. Friday, although a work day, is experienced with a kind of internal relaxation. The mood tends to soften, bosses lower their pressure a bit, and many adopt a more social or relaxed attitude, as if the air can now be breathed in a different quality. Saturday and Sunday have a different time, but they no longer strictly belong to the work week, although they are often invaded by overdue concerns or by early preparations for Monday. During the work week, people live a multitude of roles that don't always correspond to their most intimate identity. There's the role of the professional, the effective worker, the proactive collaborator, the leading boss, or the adaptable employee. These roles involve specific language, appropriate attire, ways of being and appearing. The self fragments or adapts. Sometimes, it disguises itself. In certain environments, the pressure to show enthusiasm or commitment can lead to emotional fatigue. You have to smile, even when you're exhausted. You have to be available, even when your body is crying out for a break. You have to respond politely to irritating emails or complete tasks whose usefulness is unknown. The day is filled with meetings, to-dos, interruptions, calls, messages, deliveries, deadlines, and submissions. You experience a kind of hyperconnectivity that often coexists with a deep sense of isolation. During the workweek, the clock becomes a device of power. It not only organizes time, but imposes it. It divides the day into blocks, establishes priorities, indicates when to eat, when to rest, and when to speed up. Even when working according to fixed schedules, the logic of performance prevails. You have to produce, demonstrate, move forward. For many independent workers or freelancers, the workweek has no clear boundaries. Home becomes an office, rest merges with duty, and the apparent freedom to organize one's own time transforms into a self-imposed surveillance that is more severe than external surveillance. Mobile phones vibrate even in intimate moments. Email never sleeps. Life during the workweek is not uniform. There are marked differences depending on the type of job, economic status, gender, age, and geographic location. For some, the workweek represents a source of fulfillment and meaning. Work provides identity, recognition, and belonging. For others, it is a burden, a struggle for survival, and a source of constant anxiety. Some face days of more than 12 hours, repetitive work, low pay, dangerous work, or emotionally draining work. Others, however, enjoy a measure of autonomy, security, and stimulation. In both cases, however, the structure of the workweek organizes lifetime, sets the rhythm of the body, conditions personal relationships, and defines much of the experience of living. In the midst of the hustle and bustle, small escapes appear, a chat with a colleague that relieves tension, a coffee break that tastes better because of the company, a song that plays just when you need some energy, an unexpected laugh in the middle of an absurd meeting. These brief moments can have a disproportionate emotional power, like oases in a desert of obligations. Sometimes, we daydream about vacations, a radical change, a life where Mondays don't exist. But we also find a certain security in routine, a logic that organizes the possible chaos, a framework that allows us to plan and anticipate. The workweek, with all its stresses, is also a space where relationships are forged, learning is generated, goals are pursued, and a precarious stability is achieved. Life outside of work, during the workweek, is also affected. Free time becomes scarce and precious. We must choose between resting, caring, exercising, cooking, socializing, studying, cleaning, and entertaining ourselves. Often, we opt for the minimum possible effort, a TV series, fast food, silence. Physical exhaustion turns into existential fatigue. We postpone our dreams for, when there's time, postponing art, pleasure, and contemplation. Some people fight this inertia, forcing themselves to read, paint, write, and live, even during the workweek. But it's not easy. The system isn't designed for individual flourishing, but for the fulfillment of functions. On Friday afternoon, when you close your computer or leave work, you experience an electric shock. A feeling of freedom, sometimes euphoric, sometimes barely perceptible. A temporary pause opens in which the body seems to recover a part of itself. The streets fill up, the bars come alive, the houses open up to music or the restorative silence. But Sunday afternoon arrives with a shadow, the anticipation of Monday. Sunday syndrome is not a fiction, it is the somatic expression of the return to the grind, the awareness that the work week has begun again. Thus, a cycle is completed that has been repeated, with minimal variations, week after week, for decades. For millions of people, living the workweek is a way of life that combines the necessary with the imposed, the desired with the resigned, the useful with the absurd. And yet, amidst this almost ritualistic repetition, each workweek has its own micro-stories. An unexpected project, a revealing conversation, a crisis that forces a reorganization of everything, or a piece of news that transforms routine into an exception. These events disrupt the linearity of work time and reveal that, beneath the repetitive structure, an unpredictable current beats. The workweek is not just a cage, it is also the stage where transformations occur, often invisible or ignored by those who experience them. A promotion, a resignation, a fight with a colleague, a look that leaves a mark. Work is not limited to what is done with the hands or the mind, it is also emotional, relational, symbolic. We love, hate, admire, and envy each other between 9 and 6. Bonds are built, dreams are shattered, silences are negotiated. In each day, there are small victories and failures that are rarely celebrated or mourned, but which shape the subjectivity of those who experience them. During the workweek, the body becomes an instrument of performance. It is adapted, controlled, forced to remain awake, attentive, and productive. Sometimes it is medicated, stimulated, or punished with excessive screen time, stress, and a sedentary lifestyle. Physical and mental health are affected by these imposed rhythms: insomnia, muscle cramps, anxiety, excess weight, and chronic exhaustion. But there are also times when the body reacts with resistance, an unexpected illness, persistent pain, or an emotional breakdown. These are signs of a system that is overly strained. And yet, many people continue, driven by necessity, duty, inertia, or the hope that current effort will translate into a future reward. The workweek is also marked by multiple inequalities. Not everyone experiences the same week, even if they share the same schedule. Those who have to juggle several jobs to survive live a fragmented and precarious version of routine. Those who care for children, the sick, or the elderly alongside their formal employment live a double shift that is physically and mentally exhausting. Those who work in informal conditions, without social security or guarantees, experience a constant tension between urgency and uncertainty. And those who have the privilege of a certain stability, even within the system, often carry an emotional burden that is not visible from the outside: the fear of failure, of being replaced, of being left behind. Because the workweek is steeped in competition. You don't just have to perform, you have to stand out, shine, be visible, be the best. This meritocratic logic even infiltrates moments of rest. Many feel guilty if they stop, as if free time were a betrayal of productivity. The work week isn't just an individual experience. It's a collective experience, though not always consciously shared. Cities are organized around it: public transportation, business hours, traffic patterns, family time allocation. Even the media and social media reflect and reinforce the structure of the workweek. There are jokes about Mondays, memes about coffee, hashtags celebrating Fridays, songs that accompany the day's flow. An entire culture has developed around the suffering and celebration of work. But that culture is often ambiguous. It mixes criticism with acceptance, complaint with resignation, irony with the desire to belong. Because, at its core, working during the week is also a way of being part of the world. Those who don't, due to unemployment, illness, exclusion, are often left out of a central narrative of adult life. The workweek provides a place, even when that place is experienced with discomfort. In this context, strategies of resistance emerge, some subtle, others explicit. There are those who set clear boundaries. They don't answer emails after hours, they don't take work home, they defend their weekends as sacred territory. There are those who seek spaces of creativity and meaning amidst the routine. They write, paint, sing, get together with friends, grow plants. There are those who, even within the workplace, find ways to humanize the day, a gesture of kindness, a moment of play, a conscious pause. There are also those who organize collectively, unions, cooperatives, support networks that attempt to transform the very structure of the workweek, questioning its logic, its injustices, its silences. And there are those who dream of other models: shorter workweeks, purposeful jobs, equitable distribution systems, basic incomes that free us from constant duty. These are ideas that sometimes seem utopian, but they express a real malaise, the desire to live differently. Meanwhile, most people continue to wake up every Monday feeling like everything is starting over again, with a calendar in their head and their bodies ready to repeat the dance. Living the workweek is, at its core, inhabiting a temporal structure that shapes modern life, with all its contradictions, its rituals, its pains, and its small glimmers of meaning. But experiencing the workweek is also a profoundly psychological experience. Each day brings with it a particular mood, an emotional palette that repeats itself cyclically. Monday usually brings the heaviness of re-entry, a kind of mourning for lost free time. Tuesday, a concentrated resignation. Wednesday, a certain lucidity of the midpoint, a feeling of crossing the bridge. Thursday appears tinged with a glimmer of hope, while Friday brings with it a euphoric, almost celebratory anticipation, often expressed even in body language, more relaxed postures, smiles that appear more easily, jokes in the hallways. This cyclical emotionality is even imprinted on the body, which seems to respond with different energies depending on the day, as if it too had a memory of the weekly structure. During the workweek, time becomes a sacred and scarce resource. Every minute counts, is accounted for, and scheduled. Agendas fill up with meetings, tasks, and deadlines. Spontaneity is relegated. Life is fragmented into blocks, often so tight that they leave no room for error, delay, or accident. The hours of the day become a chessboard where everything must be in its place. And this strict organization produces a profound side effect. Free time, when it arrives, seems so loaded with expectations that it often becomes disappointing. Planned leisure time confronts accumulated fatigue. Momentary freedom is experienced with the anxiety of having to make the most of it. Saturday afternoon already has an echo of Sunday. Sunday afternoon already carries the weight of Monday. Thus, time becomes an emotionally complex dimension, in which the boundaries between rest and obligation dissolve. The workweek is also a school of behavior. Here, we learn to speak in certain ways, to dress according to certain codes, to move with an implicit etiquette. Masks are developed, professionalism, strategic courtesy, moderate enthusiasm. Often, our true personality is relegated, encapsulated in brief gestures, subtle comments, knowing glances. Body language adjusts, we walk faster, we maintain our posture, we control our facial expression. This domestication of spontaneity generates a kind of second skin, a work identity that coexists, sometimes in tension, with our personal identity. And this duality can lead, over time, to a diffuse sense of disconnection from oneself. Where does pretense end and what we truly feel begin? How much of what we do during the workweek responds to a genuine desire and how much is obedience, habit, or fear? The physical space where the workweek takes place also has a subtle but persistent impact. Whether it's an office, a store, a workshop, a factory, a home computer, or a shared space, the environment shapes the experience. Lighting, noise, temperature, the arrangement of objects, everything contributes to a climate that can be stimulating or suffocating. In many cases, the environment is impersonal, repetitive, designed for efficiency rather than well-being. But there are also places where aesthetics, comfort, and human connection are prioritized. The architecture of work is not neutral, it shapes the way we think, feel, and produce. Even remote work, which has expanded recently, reconfigures the experience of time and space. The home becomes an office, the boundaries between the personal and the professional blur, and new challenges emerge, increased self-demand, hyperconnection, and loneliness. Commutes, the journeys that mark the beginning and end of the day, are also part of the workweek experience. The crowded public transport, the traffic jams, the minutes stolen from sleep or breakfast. But for some people, these journeys become intermediate spaces of freedom, moments to listen to music, read, think, observe. Others find in these mobile interludes a kind of silent ritual that allows them to transition between the world of work and their private lives. Even the simple act of walking to work can be, for some, a way to connect with their surroundings, to breathe, to prepare. The way each day begins and ends powerfully influences the perception of the entire day. We must also consider the many forms of evasion that emerge during the workweek. Some are small and mundane, checking our cell phones under the desk, procrastinating over a cup of coffee, making excuses for delaying a task. Others are more structured, personal projects that run in parallel, training courses that open doors to possible changes, ventures that allow us to dream of autonomy. In all cases, evasion doesn't necessarily imply a flight from work, but rather an attempt to regain control, to introduce cracks in the uniform logic of productivity. Because even those who enjoy their work, and there are some, need spaces where they aren't measured, where they aren't evaluated, where they can simply be, without having to perform.